abordagem dentro das
Now, a
telecomunicações.
new approach within telecommunications. We every year hold this debate. In every edition of the Congress, there are new objectives that have been achieved, new barriers to be overcome, and challenges never seen before, as was the case this year. Now, let's go into the Telcos and FiberCos world. Together with us, we have João Osório Mora from Cellnex, Paulo Favaro from Vantage Towers, and Pedro Rocha from Fast Fiber. Again, welcome. Bearing in mind that we have met before here, I would like to ask Pedro to start. What's your balance of the evolution of the business in the past year? Good afternoon. Regarding Fast Fiber, just to give you the context, we are a FiberCo, and as a FiberCo, we supply services to the other operators, and we have the intention of providing services in a neutral, non-discriminatory way to all operators. That's why we were established in the year 2024-2025. In reality, we have been making efforts in that direction, and we have shown effectively that this is a neutral network entirely open to the operators. The use so far was definitely higher in the case of retail telecommunication operators that we didn't have so far, namely B2C services to companies and also to retail operators within the scope of the development of their own networks and also within the scope of 5G. And the reason behind that growth is the market needs to know that the existence of FiberCos and TowerCos, and we have a shared network, and the operators don't need to make the investments they need to make to extend their networks, but that they can share this network with others, made it possible for us to have our business growing significantly this year. Pedro, can you go into the details of network coverage, acquisition of infrastructures? The operators, for example, have big needs regarding 5G, and we make available our fiber network to develop 5G sites, many in remote areas, and they didn't have coverage, and that's what we've made available to them. Often the operators are sharing it with 2-3 operators more, but they are having access to this fiber network. Other operators didn't have coverage in every region of the country to provide services to their individual and corporate customers, and they're using our infrastructure. So they don't need to make the network investments. There isn't a doubling of investments. There isn't a fragmentation of networks. There's an economy of scale that is higher in our network, and the operators differentiate themselves through the service they provide to the customers and not the coverage of their networks. To that extent, did they meet the existing needs? Well, we tried. We had a pre-established network, but we also made significant investments in our network during 2024 and also during 2025 to meet the needs of our customers. In 2024, we made around 80 million euros capex investment to develop our network, and versus 2023, it was pretty much the same figure.
Paulo,
can you share with us the perspective of Vantage Towers? What was 2024 and 2025 like? Good afternoon. Briefly, I would like to say it was a very good year, a very positive year. Yet another year of growth, and it honestly exceeded our expectations. Just to give you a notion of the volume of work we've had during the year, we are developing new sites. at the end of the year 100 new premises in white zones where there was no coverage in very difficult conditions. As Pedro was saying, we also continued working with all the operators in the market, and we started placing all the operators in our premises. Also in this case, hundreds of co-locations. And we continued with the development of 5G, and over 1,000 premises were updated or upgraded from the viewpoint of civil engineering and energy. Again, this involved a lot of work, and in this session we had last year in this Congress, I said that I would expect to reach a value of sharing rate between 1.6 and 1.7 on average, 2 operators in each of the premises, and I am happy to confirm that we have exceeded 1.7. Regarding 2025, we want to pursue down this road. The main aspects of our energy will be the organic growth, and we believe that here we still have certain things to do in the market, and we are available to help our customers. And we have other aspects that are related with optimizing our operations. We are strongly investing in the digitalization of our operation and internal processes and procedures. That's a need. Yes, it is. Last year, we also said that we developed a competence center in Portugal, and this happened last year when we started having this center in Portugal, and this is helping us to pursue this digitalization agenda. So we are optimizing what we have, and this includes management efficiency and also to develop further premises on the ground. So we hope that 2025, 2026, we continue what we've been doing. So a good year for fast fiber, a good year for Vantage Towers. What about Cellnex, João? Good afternoon, Carolina. At Cellnex, we also had a year of growth and investment.
Let me thank APDC, Rogério and Sandra, to be part of one more panel. APDC was 40 years old last year, and 10 years. And we invested more than 40 billion euros in 40 transactions in 12 countries, and we became the largest European operators of mobile communication infrastructures, more than 110,000 towers in these countries, and cover 250 million Europeans. In Portugal, we ended the year with 6,700 sites, 400 indoor sites. We had a revenue growth above 20%, one of the largest in the Cellnex group, and we made a big investment, more than 120 million euros in new infrastructures in Portugal. This investment was used, on one hand, to support adaptations in existing sites, more than 1,000 sites to obtain new co-locations, and it was also used to build new sites. We built more than 169 new sites. We have a total of over 800 new sites which have been built since 2020, since we started building them. These sites have been planned from scratch to support 3 operators, and 90% of these sites or more are located in a low, medium density. Relevant contribution for the territorial cohesion in our country. In 2024, it was a new phase that had started in 2023, a new group phase after 8 years of expansion per acquisition. We went into another phase of operation consolidation with an organic growth and shareholder remuneration, which are the two essential pillars.
Dentro do eixo do crescimento orgânico, a parte das eficiências é uma área que demos aqui bastante atenção e criámos uma empresa e uma atividade específica para real estate, ou seja, nós em Portugal e também na Europa devemos ser dos maiores arrendatários do país. Temos contratos de arrendamento em todos estes 6.700 sites que referi com senhorios. E temos depois contratos com os nossos clientes, os operadores, com relações de 15 a 20 anos. E, portanto, é muito importante conseguirmos assegurar que nestes sites, por um lado, conseguimos ter esta estabilidade contratual para um dia não ficarmos sem os sites e, por outro, tentarmos também aqui negociar algumas aquisições de sites mais críticos e foi isso que fizemos com essa empresa. Portanto, criámos uma empresa no grupo. Portugal esteve entre os 5 países que liderou este processo. Tivemos só em 2024 mais de 5 milhões de euros em investimento de terrenos que ou comprámos ou fizemos contratos de longo prazo. E isto metemos aqui também, portanto, por um lado as poupanças e por outro lado este longo prazo que precisamos para os contratos com os operadores. Portanto, foi um ano de bastante crescimento, muito investimento, um contributo relevante para a coesão territorial e também para este esforço das metas digitais, quer de Portugal, quer para a Europa.
Começámos aqui pelos aspectos mais positivos, está feita a primeira ronda. Eu gostava de ouvir-vos sobre desafios, barreiras, e houve um enorme. Este ano, já há pouco, ouvimos aqui colegas vossos a falar do apagão. O país ficou às escuras pela primeira vez, sem rede móvel, sem dados, sem eletricidade. No caso da Fast Fiber, Pedro Rocha, não há, ou seja, a empresa não é afetada nem sequer indiretamente, mas gostava que partilhasse connosco, no fundo, a sua perspectiva, ligado a esta área, como é que foi, como é que a empresa viveu essas horas?
Bem, a Fast Fiber não é impactada porque nós somos uma rede de fibra e somos uma rede de fibra passiva e por isso nós não temos energia para ligar os equipamentos. Essa parte está toda do lado dos operadores e por isso o nosso impacto relativamente do apagão é relativamente reduzido. Obviamente que teve impacto nas operações da própria empresa, okay? Ou seja, nas operações, porque nós temos que operar e manter uma rede de fibra e por isso, a partir do momento em que ficamos sem energia, na realidade todas as iterações são um bocadinho mais dificultadas. Esta questão relativamente ao apagão, ou seja, está colocada agora nesta fase, colocou-se porque na realidade existiu o apagão, mas eu acho que nós devemos pensar um bocadinho na resiliência das redes como no seu global e não é só única e exclusivamente através das energias, ou seja, existem outros fatores que poderão implicar interrupção de serviço das redes e, na realidade, esses fatores devem ser tidos em conta. E, por exemplo, fatores como incêndios, perturbações climatéricas significativamente elevadas e que isso, sim, tem implicações muito mais graves numa rede passiva como a da Fast Fiber.
O país já passou por isso.
E já passei por isso, ou seja, nós tivemos incêndios ao longo destes últimos anos, tivemos tempestades, ainda agora também durante o inverno tivemos umas tempestades, o Martinho, bastante significativa, ou seja, e nessa altura, na realidade, aquilo que nós temos que fazer é estar prontos para, porque não há forma de as obviar, mas é estar pronto para, na realidade, operar o mais rapidamente possível, mas, a priori, aquilo que nós deveríamos realizar era, e que nós estamos a realizar, é dotar a nossa rede de uma resiliência que, se calhar, ela ainda não tem. Ou seja, e digo isso, por exemplo, na Fast Fiber nós temos um programa para passar todos, ou não é todos, mas principalmente aqueles que estão nas rotas principais, nos traçados principais de fibra, passar toda essa fibra que está em traçados aéreos e que está assente em postos para traçados subterrâneos. Ficará muito mais protegido e ficará muito mais... não será tão afetado por todos esses fenómenos atmosféricos. Tudo isso tem um custo, mas nós estamos a realizar esse trabalho de realizar e retirar as fibras do traçado aéreo para pôr em condutas. Agora...
Isso está em que ponto? Essa necessidade está em que que ponto?
Nós não estamos a fazer globalmente, estamos a fazer nas principais rotas, naquelas rotas que na realidade nos permitem assegurar mais serviço aos clientes e às empresas. Por exemplo, rotas internacionais. Por exemplo, rotas com ligação aos data centers. Por exemplo, rotas de ligação aos cabos submarinos. Porque, na realidade, aí são a grande concentração de dados e são essas rotas que necessitam de uma resiliência. Nós sentimos isso, mas os nossos clientes também sentem isso. Ou seja, não há operador nenhum de data center que queira ter uma conectividade da sua rede que não seja em condutas. E isso é essencial. E eu diria mesmo, ou seja, acaba por ser essencial para o país, se nós queremos efetivamente que Portugal seja uma economia digital, verdadeiramente digital, e que seja até um exemplo relativamente à Europa, e uma porta de entrada de cabos submarinos e de data centers, nós temos que seguir esse caminho. E temos que seguir esse caminho, dotando efetivamente as empresas de uma resiliência que hoje em dia não tem. Isso não se faz sozinho com os operadores.
Companies with resilience at Fast Fiber we're ready, but we need all our stakeholders, all involved stakeholders to play a role. In other words, we play a role, our operators as well, and the government and regulator also play a very important role to enable us to use the infrastructures that already exist. What measures, what governmental measures would help? Implement legislation, put into effect legislation that already exists for the use of infrastructure, be implemented in practice, and giving us a possibility of the right to build. That is the so-called bureaucracy, red tapes. No, it exists, but we'd like to see them being implemented, and all this is resilience, equipping the network and making us obtain international clients. The national strategy, the government's national strategy, 2030 strategy will only be achieved if in Portugal, if indeed we do have grids with that quality. Parallel to this, we also have to pay attention to our electrical network to be equipped with resilience, but I think that the other panel mentioned it quite often, so that in reality we can continue. It's not plausible, not by Fast Fiber, but by other operators, to be able to have energy for a very long time. This is the electric network's reality. It's at the origin of this problem. Let's go back to the 20th of April and how the Advantage see it. That day was horrible. It was a terrible day, a horrible day. And it was when I went on vacation. It was my first. It was my first day on vacation. As Pedro mentioned, all these companies have the capacity to manage crisis situations. It's not the first time this happens, like fires, storms, but this only happened in a specific geographic area. We had a disruption in the country, and the country was at a standstill, and at the same time. So a crisis unit was set up so that there be a communication channel for the partners working with us that is in asset maintenance, and at the end we weren't able to do much because our power came from the electric network, and in reality, not all sites are the same. There are sites which are more important. Pedro mentioned the routes or routes, and for me, it's the site, and it's to speak. We need to speak to our clients to try to expand the site's economy. This is translating into our moving generators to install them in the sites identified, and sometimes this also means simply sending people to see what's happening in these sites and work as such. Indeed, this was only the first part, and the work continued the following days. Then the main work was to correct what was happening, adjust, correct once the power was coming back. Sometimes the equipment was not running, working. There were problems because power came back suddenly and again abruptly. We needed to send people to check what was happening, and then from then on, in my opinion, there was more work that was done, which was to define what type of resilience that we seek in these networks and to work with our customers to implement this resilience. And once again, this means that we need to think where we want to place generators, more batteries, increase autonomy. This is a very big job. And today we're still a bit in shock. We don't want this to happen. And if it does happen, we don't want to have that same situation. We're working with our customers, and just to clarify, we're speaking about resilience. We're not speaking about the resilience that did not exist. Resilience does exist, but not at the level needed. We're speaking about increasing the resilience in our networks based on our customers' requirements and requests, but it's something more. Maybe the incident, what happened, reshaped the concept of resilience, which is sought, and we're working on what is normal today. José Mora, you have the advantage of Selex operating in Portugal as well as in Spain. How was it managed? How was it to manage a company what entails a telecommunication company on a horrible day? While Paulo was on holidays. It was a very tense day with quite a lot of pressure. We started with energy, with failures. 2-3 minutes after, our customers said they had no power, and then I received a call from the crisis committee from Spain, referring that there was no power in Spain, Portugal, and south of France. What did you do at that stage? What did you do? Because we didn't really know what was happening. What measures were taken? Practically, the experience was very different from Portugal and Spain. In Portugal, we don't have active services. We don't have relevant services, so what we provide is a passive service, and the energy system is from the operator. In Portugal, we accompany the operators from the onset, asking if we needed to go to these sites. We upgraded all. We updated our electronic system using mobile phone, any site, a check could be done, and both CIREP and telecommunication operators, we saw that the concerns were very different. It wasn't with the passive network, but the active one, and we were not able to help. And also with transmission, in Spain we have broadcasting network as well as radio broadcasting. We provide direct service. We also have emergency networks from the Coastal Guard, and there we had a very active participation. We saw how the network behaved in our crisis unit, not only in terms of the broadcasting. People were able to follow by listening to the radio. People were able to listen to the radio and know what was happening. And also the emergency networks. Our network was always operational in the end. We were congratulated by the authorities, and it's in Spain. It's in Spain. We had a very different scenario than what happened in Portugal.
Isto foi trabalho incansável das nossas equipas.
So our teams worked non-stop. This didn't end on the 28th, since Spain energy was available sooner. But this continued through the following days, so to stabilize the network and the operations. I would just like to say, following what Pedro said, the power outage was above all an electricity outage, and I believe there was an injustice, and this is the word of how it was perceived here in Portugal, that it was the operators, telecom operators, who failed. What failed was the energy supply. First and foremost, we don't know how that happened. 2 months have elapsed and we don't have an answer for that. And also in the business world, there's an absence regarding the answer to that. And we don't understand either why did it take so long to have the plants working. So when we talk about resilience, it's to prevent downtime, but the other problem is how fast can we put the system up and running again? Or we cannot.
Is how to make a
essa teoria e investimentos que
and all the investments that have been identified as needed. There's a lot to be done in terms of electrical resilience and less in telecommunications. This was a big test for all of us. Of course, we're not going to do a test and put the country on hold, because we want to see how the grids react. But it's also about the components of the networks, the circuitry, the transmission, to see where can we improve things so that we are more resilient. It's not feasible to have batteries and diesel generators in every site. This is not going to happen. So we're going to learn, but the focus again, like I said, must be on the electricity resilience and not so much telecommunications. But of course, I'm sure there are lessons to be drawn from this challenge that you've had. Because this was a national outage. In the case of Fast Fiber, there is no direct or indirect effect. But going back to resilience, and Pedro was giving the example of severe climate phenomena, and Portugal has been hit, unfortunately. And are there plans to reinforce the resilience of infrastructures, objective plans? We have a plan. Like I mentioned, we have a plan to put a large part of our infrastructures in underground ducts so that they are not at the mercy of this climate phenomena. But like I said, all resilience matters must be agreed upon. And like João said about the energy, this was it was the energy resilience that is the issue, but there's something else. We need a systemic, cross-cutting response. Energy must play its role, and of course telecommunications also, so that we are more resistant to an energy outage. In climate phenomena, we need to play our role, but others also, like in the business world and at the government level and at the regulator level. Today, there is already the possibility with the decree law enabling us to use infrastructures in a country where we can put our fiber networks. And like I said, although there is this possibility, in practice, this is not done, and we cannot do it, although we want to. In practice, what happens today does not enable us to build ducts
ou seja,
in roads or on the roads. You cannot have cables in certain places. But is it for environmental reasons? No, it's political interests or legislative matters. So that's why I'm saying this means that each and everyone must play their role, and that's what we're doing. All this resilience backdrop is increasingly important, and like I said, if we want a digital country and we have telecommunication networks that are resilient, not only because of electricity but also because of fiber, we need to go down this road. We need a cross-cutting response, and if this is not done, we're lagging behind in the digital part.
Para dar aqui uma comparação, em outros países que estão mais evoluídos,
and just to compare with other countries that are more developed, and as far as digitalization, the world is progressing, but the Asian Southeast, the US, they are more advanced than we are. Now the proliferation of data centers is huge, and all the networks that do this ecosystem of data centers linked to submarine cables, international routes, and large businesses, this is almost bulletproof. And today, when we talk about the big customers such as Google, Meta or Amazon, what they want is dedicated networks, and only and exclusively for them, so that they are sure if there is a catastrophe, in reality, they know how to act, and the network is not contaminated and used by others. And I think we should do something similar, so as to give resilience to our networks, so that we may compete with other countries. Paulo Favaro, on that day, we were all in the dark. Did companies started looking at resilience in another way? It's like I was saying before. On an immediate term, we need to mitigate the impact, and we need to define also what are the requirements and work on those. Just to give you an example. Well, severe climate incidents were mentioned. Usually, what we have is inspections to our infrastructures, to our towers, and we are investing so that this is done. And we are managing our assets, and this is something that we will continue to do, because this helps in the mitigation of the impact of such phenomena. For example, in the case of the Matinho storm, we had damages, but no infrastructure collapsed. Why? Because we had done before these inspections and also proactive maintenance. It was exactly that's what was my intention. If this is something that has been done for a long time by the businesses, well, from the viewpoint of infrastructures, the preventive maintenance has always been done. And since we existed, since our establishment, this has been happening because we're managing our portfolio. From the viewpoint of resilience and energy, we already had good practices that were being implemented. Now, what happened makes us think about the reinforcement of the already existing practices. For example, the life cycle of batteries, or the few generators that we have installed. As Ron was saying, you're not going to install generators everywhere. This does not happen in Portugal. It's the same in other countries. So we identified that the generators have the capacity to start in case this is needed. This was already being done. What happened with the outage? We made us look at the preventive maintenance list and decide what we should do to further reinforce these procedures. It was already being done. It was, however, such a far-reaching discussion, and it means that we need to look again at our procedures. João, what were the effects of this disruption regarding the way Cellnex has been investing? Well, we have different realities in Portugal and in Spain. In Spain, it also helped to see what we already had in place and the recognition that was made, but this showed everybody how important it is to ensure critical services to the population. As I was saying, this perception that telecommunications, if they fail, everything stops. It's a big responsibility. Therefore, we need to ensure this continuity. In Portugal, there was the outage, but there wasn't a big impact for our business. But as Pedro has said, we've had several storms. Martinho in March. In 2018, for those who remember, we had Leslie that ravaged above all Figueira da Foz. And unlike Pedro, we cannot bury our towers. So the only thing left is to reinforce them. And we have reinforced most of our towers with preventive activities and preventive maintenance, and also to co-localize new customers. We have an ongoing project with hundreds of co-localization of our anchor customers, and also with thousands of sites that were subject to an intervention, and most of them had to be reinforced. So this portfolio that we acquired was acquired above all in the 90s, when operators started building their towers, and this was being done only for their own network. So when we added more equipment to the tower, there's a process to reinforce it, and this might be a more classical reinforcement, and maybe I would like to talk about innovative processes at Cellnex, resulting from this large project that we've had with the localizations in hundreds of sites. We were faced with a situation that in many of these sites we could not do these reinforcements with lower specs in their building phase, and even with the traditional reinforcements. Well, this was not possible, so the replacement was to, the solution was to replace the site, and we're talking in this case about an investment that wouldn't be financially feasible, and it would be involving a lot of time. Internally, together with the partners that we work with, we developed the infrastructures to reinforce our towers, and we have the skeleton, and I would like to invite you, when you are in the A1 road, national road, and A2, you have 3 reinforcements in our towers, and you can see it. This type of reinforcement had never been done. João, let me save this last minutes for the technological part of innovation. And let me now ask Pedro, what has been the technological evolution in the networks? In the fiber networks, we have innovation in all that is the organization, and we tried above all to do this with the processes, and our role and what Fast Fiber does is to try and give an answer, a response to what innovators believe innovation should be and how it should be implemented. So we equip the operators with the means enabling them to innovate.
So what we've been seeing in this digital world, there's been a greater capillarity of the fiber networks with greater capacity, and that is why what we're trying to do is to equip the country and the infrastructures with this capillarity and carrying out investments so that the operators can provide their services, and this in a fixed network as well as mobile. Paulo, where is the technological evolution? Where is it? In the case of Vantage Towers, where is it at? Innovation relates to engineering innovation, product innovation. In the case of the engineering innovation last year, we worked with partners developing a solution of towers that are built with a polymer which is reinforced with glass. It helps to deploy, implement sites in an urban context regarding buildings. We installed this in Lisbon downtown. In the case of product innovation, we also worked on a grid site concept, and one of our main difficulties is the connection to the power grid. Once again, repeating this, and we developed a solution that jointly with solar energy batteries generators to give our customers possibility to make the sites run, and this happens due to the due to our partners' participation, and also the IT Competence Center located in Portugal. We're moving towards integrating AI in our in-house processes. For instance, we have processes with very huge transactional volumes, interactions with the owners of these sites, and so introducing AI makes an initial screening be done, and it provides context to our employees so that they can do a job, so that they can make decisions and take actions. This is an example of the integration that we're working with. And we also have other processes where we're doing the same thing. João, you already had the opportunity of mentioning what has been said. What about licensing? And we're almost finishing this. We're almost finishing this panel. What's the gigantic barrier? Has anything changed? It would be the second most gigantic barrier. Our main barrier is energy, power, because telecommunication did not work without electricity. Every time we upgrade a site with 5G, every time we have a new client, we set up a site, we need energy/power, which can take months or years. And this, I saw that we had 15 sites, and in 2023, we made that investment They have no power. The populations don't have communication grids, and we're speaking about low voltage, speaking about 2 or 3 outlets as we have at home. I'm not speaking about a data center. This is energy to connect to 1 or 2 hair dryers at home. And so we need, and we've alerted our entities for quicker processes because this is our main obstacle. Licensing, permitting is complicated. 300 or so municipalities with its own procedure. We think that GIA this new European regulation, we think will help to solve some of the bureaucracy, some of these procedures, so that we can obtain a quicker licensing. And when there was when there are obstacles we need to try to overcome. We need these stations. They might not seem very pretty, but they're necessary. We have solutions to hide them when they're not historic buildings and so on. But let us place these stations. Let us place them as quickly as possible. These are the main challenges that we face, so as to contribute to this digital transition and to the EU targets and Portugal and digital Portugal. This is the end of our debate. I wish you quite a lot of resilience for next year. I hope that there won't be any surprises as there was this year. Thank you very much.